Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk about the new war in the Middle East, a war that has been triggered by Hamas's massive invasion of Iraq. Hamas is a terrorist organization that controls Gaza. It has been seeking to establish an Islamic state in Gaza and get independence for Palestinians from Israel. But the methods it has been using for all these decades, for the last 3-4 decades, has been targeting civilians in Israel and also killing civilians. And it is listed as a terrorist organization by the United States, for sure, and of course Israel. But its latest attack on Israel is unprecedented, both in scope and in size. It has literally invaded Israel from the south by land, by air, by sea. It used parasailers to send fighters across. It has sent people across by breaking the barriers that separate Gaza from Israel. And basically, it has attacked civilians, it has attacked military officers. And according to New York Times, so far, 600 Israelis have been killed, nearly 2,000 have been injured. And according to The Guardian, over 100 Israeli soldiers and civilians have been taken hostage by Hamas, who have taken them across the divide back into Gaza. So in this, I've been traveling, as the regular listeners of Khanversations know. I'm now in Rome, in Italy. I'm here for a State Department conference, which is a bit later, but I came early so that I could see Rome. So I've been a bit out of touch, and therefore I'm coming late to the discussion. So most of the observations and points and that I think I will make have already been made by others in various mediums. So if you're reading media from a wide spectrum, so if you're reading American media, Israeli media, and the Arab media, then perhaps everything that I will say you already have heard about it, but you have my take on it, a Khanversations perspective, and I hope you find that enlightening and interesting. But as always, before I begin any analysis, I do request those who have come here for the first time or have been watching and have not subscribed to Khanversations, please subscribe to Khanversations, like the video, press the bell icon. And if you can support Khanversations, do consider joining it. You can join it by pressing the button that is next to subscribe, or there's a link in the video description on how to join Khanversations. So why now? Why this attack? So it raises lots of questions. Hamas has attacked Israel. Israel has declared war. Israel has retaliated already in a very massive way. There are nearly 300 Palestinians who are already dead and close to 1,000 injured. Several residential buildings have exploded. Many parts of Gaza look like a ball of fire. So the fury and anger of Israel is clearly manifest. And that's not going to be the end of it. I think this war is going to go on for several weeks as Israel seeks to punish the Palestinians. It remains to be seen whether it will punish only Hamas or all of Gaza or all of Palestinians who also live in West Bank. The battle hasn't really extended to battle, while there has been some violence in the West Bank and some rockets have been fired by Hezbollah from the north. There isn't a battle as such waging on the western and the northern frontiers of Israel, but you can clearly see from the southern frontier that there's still a war-like situation. Hamas is still shooting rockets. Israel is still sending in everything that it can, including Air Force. So this war is going to continue till Israel feels that it has done enough to punish Hamas and the Gazians for doing something which is so shocking to Israel. 50 years after the Yom Kippur War, the Israelis had never expected such a thing to happen. So in many ways, this is also a failure of two things from Israel. It is a failure of intelligence. Clearly, nobody had any idea that this was going to happen. Neither the so-called Israeli intelligence, which is so celebrated in the world as perhaps the best. And apparently, they had no idea that Hamas was planning such a massive operation. The nature of the operation shows that it was complex, it was well planned, it was reasonably well executed, And there were lots and lots of people involved in this plan. And so there was no leak, no operational leak. So the operational security that Hamas maintained during the months that it must have taken to plan this must come as a major shock, not just to the Israeli intelligence, but also the intelligence capability of its allies. What about the United States? What about the Five Eyes and all the other European countries which share intelligence with Israel? So this failure of intelligence, it's quite possible because all this, the West is these days has this one-point agenda, which is Russia, Ukraine. So they're completely focused, I guess, on spying on Russia. So completely missed Hamas. I don't know. I have no explanation until we get some kind of an inquiry and a proper review of all the intelligence agencies which help Israel. We are not going to get an idea. On the other hand, why did Hamas do this? This is the key question. And just saying that it's a terrorist organization and this is what it does not explain to, yes, what it did is horrendous, targeting civilians, killing children, and all of that. It is disgusting and needs to be condemned in no certain terms. But why now, and why in such a massive way? And I submit to you that this is not just an attack on Israel. This is also an attack on the expansion of the Abrahamic Accords. As the Abrahamic Accords expanded and the talk of Saudi Arabia being included in the Abrahamic Accords, so that the discussions were going so well that the Saudi prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman felt confident enough to give an interview to Fox and basically says that there's progress every day. And so basically what was happening was that Arabs who were on the side of the Palestinians in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict were moving ahead into and creating a new Middle East in which Israel and all the Arab states were partners in developing technology and economic prosperity, investing in each other, and leaving the Palestinians behind and the Palestinian cause. So in many ways, it became quite apparent to the Palestinians that as they were not part of the Abrahamic Accords, and Biden, especially in this particular term, given his abysmal approval ratings, and he still wants to run for president. Even more than 50% of Democrats don't want Biden to run for president. So I guess, like every president who thinks that one way to win an election is by bringing about some kind of a peace deal in Palestine. And so Biden suddenly, after 2.5 years in office, decided to push the Abrahamic Accords towards Saudi Arabia. And even in the past few weeks, his foreign policy advisors and key, shall we say, office holders, Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, have been going back and forth and dealing with Saudi Arabia and trying to push Saudi Arabia. So the Saudis basically want three things. According to reports, Prince Salman doesn't really care about the Palestinian issue, but his father does. And therefore, the three things that MBS has demanded of the United States is access to peaceful nuclear technology, a guarantee, a security guarantee, a treaty with the United States like the one that South Korea and Japan have, that in case Saudi Arabia is attacked, the United States will come to its aid and defend it. This clearly is a way to deal with the threat that Saudi Arabia perceives from Iran. And the third one was to move, and this is what he had proposed. I mean, this is the starting point of Saudi Arabia, to move forward on the Arab-Israeli peace process. That's it. Making or creating a Palestinian state was not a precondition. Withdrawing from West Bank was not a precondition. Stopping settlement building, nothing specific, just moving forward on the peace process. And I think Hamas and the Palestinians realized that the world was leaving them behind. They had no place in the so-called New Middle East. And this attack, this massive attack, completely upsets this whole foundations of the New Middle East. And you can see from the responses, Saudi Arabia basically says there should be no escalation. There is no condemnation from Saudi Arabia. In fact, Saudi Arabia does talk about the need to move forward on the Palestinian peace process. The United Arab Emirates does not condemn it in the same terms. UAE is part of I2U2, close ally of Israel, already signed the Abrahamic Accords. But you can see from its statement that it is not very harsh on the Palestinians like the Europeans and the United States or India, for that matter, which have stood by Israel very firmly. China, on the other hand, did condemn the violence, but immediately talked about the two-state solution, saying that the only solution is a two-state solution. For 30 years now, it's been, I think, 30 years since the Madrid Peace Accords, or the peace process began. And the Palestinian Liberation Organization gave up its armed struggle, and there was hope that there will be a two-state solution. And the two-state solution has not come about. And every day, the Israelis expand settlements in the West Bank. The land that was available to create a Palestinian state gradually disappears to such an extent that at this moment, if you look at the map, you will realize that it's impossible to create a viable Palestinian state. So this whole idea of the disappearance of the possibility of a Palestinian state for the Palestinians, and the fact that they do not have equal rights at all, they are living in an apartheid-like situation. So what are the options for the Palestinians? Two-state solution or a one-state solution in which they have equal rights, and that creates all kinds of insecurities for the Israelis. They feel that if they lose the demographic battle and Palestinians becoming a majority, then there will be no Jewish state. And so what? A genocide of Palestinians, kill them all? Or an ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, push them all into Egypt or Jordan? I don't know what the ultimate solution is. But at the moment, the Israeli occupation of West Bank and its complete isolation with the help of Egypt, of Gaza, seems never ending. There is no end in sight to the absence of rights of nationalism to the Palestinians. And so the desperation and the hopelessness of the Palestinians continues. And I'm sorry to say, but I don't think that this is a war like this is going to be the last war. No matter how many Palestinians Israel kills in Gaza, and how, even if it wipes out all of Hamas, the conditions that are generating these people will remain. And if the structural conditions that breed, which means basically the occupation, which forces people to resist it, remains, then there will be new resistance. So yes, there will be a short-term solution, which means they will punish, decapacitate Hamas, and basically perhaps Israel may even find and kill all the leaders in Gaza of the Hamas organization. But as long as the occupation remains and there is no peaceful solution to this conflict, it will go on. I don't understand why Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the other Arab states think that they can ignore the Palestinians and move ahead. What may happen ultimately is that all of these Arab states will become like Europe and America, completely and 100% aligned with Israel against the Palestinians. And then perhaps they can have their Abrahamic Accords. But until that time, when there is some perception that the Arab states do support the Palestinian cause, the Palestinian geopolitical thinking will continue to ensure that there is no comprehensive peace between Arab states and Israel without a resolution of the Palestinian problem. I also think, and this is an important point, I think this is another major failure of Joe Biden's foreign policy. His one failure is the Ukrainian policy, in which we thought the US has not taken any step to create a peace process and bring Ukraine and Russia to the table. If the US had demanded that, I think it would have happened. But the US, instead of trying to end the war, has continued to provide resources to Ukraine, which continues to keep the war going for like nearly 2 years now. And in the process, nearly 20% of the Ukrainian population has diminished. Either they have left the country or hundreds of thousands have died. And Ukraine is devastated in many parts, and the war continues. And this is Biden's policy, to keep going at it. As long as the Ukrainians are willing to fight, let's continue to give them the means. It just cost $100 billion so far to the US, another $100 billion. Then the war will go on for a couple of years and Russia will become weak. And so the NATO expansion takes place. And then the similar model was being pursued here in the Middle East. They ignore the Palestinian issue, and then find some ways to continue and expand the Abrahamic Accords. And I wouldn't be surprised that Biden was potentially thinking of giving at least one or two peaceful, energy-related nuclear reactors and some kind of an agreement. I hope that the Saudis are smart enough to at least demand a treaty. If they get a deal just from the president, like the JCPOA that Obama gave Iran, and then the next president will simply come and cancel that executive agreement. So at least they were looking for that. So basically, Joe Biden's policy to completely ignore the Palestinian issue and the problem and push full scale at a really very rapid pace. The Abrahamic Accords deal with Saudi Arabia is one of the reasons why I think that the Palestinians have played. And there are many analysts in the West, etc., who believe that the US is completely innocent always, that we do nothing wrong and we are always right, and we are not responsible. We are not responsible for NATO expansion and Russian invasion of Ukraine. Just Russia is evil. Ukraine is wonderful democracy. And so Russia, purely out of its evilness, has attacked Ukraine, and we can see the same thing here. The United States has done nothing. There is no occupation of Israel. The Palestinians are just like that. And it is a sheer evilness of Hamas that they have attacked Israel. Even though on a daily basis, Israel breaks international law. And the man, Joe Biden, who loves to talk about rule-based order, is in the United States, are fundamentally responsible for enabling Israel to break international law every day. Hamas, without doubt, is a terrorist organization, and I have no qualms in saying that Hamas has done more damage and more harm to the Palestinians than it has achieved. Yes, it managed to expel Israel from Gaza, but what is the quality of life for people in Gaza is many times worse than that of West Bank, where apartheid policies are so distinctly visible. So in that sense, there's nothing nice to say about Hamas, except to say that it is getting more and more desperate. And the fear that the Palestinian cause will be lost completely as the rest of the Arab world continues to abandon them. And we must not forget that one of the reasons why Gaza is an open-air prison is because of Egypt, another important Arab country, which continues to block and help Israel create a prison-like circumstances for Gaza. So what's going to happen in the near future? In the near future, what we're going to see is that Israel will continue for weeks, I guess, to punish the Palestinians. There will probably be thousands of casualties. Maybe hundreds of children and civilians will also die in this battle. While the capacity of Hamas to do something like this will definitely diminish, what we're going to see is that nearly all over the world, a lot of public opinion is going to turn in their favor. Today, it's with Israel. Most of the Western countries, even leaders in the Arab world, are expressing their sympathy. But as Israeli response goes on, you will see that the anger in the Arab world will rise, and that will, definitely handcuff Mohammed bin Salman, and he will not be able to move forward with the peace process. It'll be interesting to watch what UAE does. Will UAE just keep quiet and just keep saying, oh, it's important to de-escalate? Will they give some money to rebuild Gaza? I don't know what it does. I'm very curious to see how it handles the Arab street and the public opinion in the Arab world. Countries in Asia also are very concerned because if the situation continues to remain like this, if there is no immediate de-escalation, you can see that Jordan and Egypt are trying to work together and working with Israelis and interacting with the Palestinians and trying to de-escalate this situation. And I have not yet read what the UN Security Council has done, but it was very interesting to see that the title under which they are about to meet talks about the situation in the Middle East and the Palestinian problem. So there are countries who are not just discussing Hamas's invasion of Israel and nothing else. That's not happening. Uh, they want to talk about broader perspective. So in that sense, the United States effort to just talk about how this is an unprovoked attack, Israelis did nothing, Hamas just attacked them, that's not going to happen. They're going to talk about where is the peace process, what's happening to the Palestinian solution, what's happening to the settlements. I think all of those are going to come up. There were efforts to keep this private at the UN Security Council. Private means other countries could have been invited, like Israel could have been also part of it. I think I don't know whether Israel is on the UN Security Council or not at the moment, but they made it like just UN Security Council members. So it's interesting to see what's happening on the global level. I also think that there is another aspect to this, which is it kind of helps Netanyahu to some extent. Netanyahu's effort to eliminate the checks and balances inside Israel and completely subordinate the judiciary to the executive, which means that basically whatever the government says goes, and the courts have no right. Especially in Israel, it becomes more complicated because they don't have a constitution, so it becomes very difficult to define what exactly are the rights of the court. But there was an assumption that there was the checks and balances, and the courts used to question the decisions made by the executive. But his efforts to undermine that had created a huge distance between Israel and the US, and Biden basically did not even meet with Netanyahu when he came last week for the UN General Assembly meeting. So now with this Hamas's attack on Israel, not only the Israelis who were opposing, those who were boycotting the military service, etc., all of them are now uniting. So in that sense, Hamas has helped solve a lot of Netanyahu's problems by helping it unite the Israelis at home and once again bring the United States in full alignment with Israel. And now I am sure Biden is talking to Netanyahu on the phone all the time. But I do want to remind that at least 2 or 3 days before this event happened, one could see that even in the Democratic Party, there was a growing disagreement on US policy towards Israel and Palestine. And 20 senators had written a letter to Joe Biden saying they disagree with what he was doing with MBS, with the Saudis. And it's very interesting. One question in there was basically that they had raised was, what is in it for the United States? So the Israelis get this and that, and the Saudis get this and that. What does America get? So it was very interesting to me to see that finally the Democrats realized that they're also representatives of the United States, and asking what is in it for the United States is also part of their job. So you had 20 senators out of 51 that Democrats have in the Senate, and they were questioning Biden's policy to rush ahead with this Abrahamic Accords. So in that sense, now what Hamas has done is a major blow against the Palestinian cause. So now these senators will now all be will have to, I guess, drop their opposition of the Biden policy and align with the president in matters, in times of war. There is no room for domestic dissent. And so in that sense, Hamas has not only undermined the Palestinian cause in the United States, because the letter from the senators very clearly said that they are not willing to accept it. It will not pass the Senate as a treaty without Israeli making concessions to the Palestinians. And basically the question was that we will not support this if there's not much significant movement on the Palestinian state. So what this attack does is at least two things. This is my analysis, and as I said, since I'm coming to the issue pretty late, there are lots of people. It's a horrible attack. Lots of civilians are already dead. On the Israeli side, a lot more, many times more Palestinians are definitely going to die before this war stops. But the Palestinian issue, which was marginalized, is now world and center. Hamas has not only attacked Israel, it has attacked the Abrahamic Accords, it has attacked the ambitions of Mohammed bin Salman, but it has also attacked the world agenda. And now, once again, the Palestinian issue will be front and center, and countries will be talking about it in the near future. So, for example, at G20, in the Delhi summit, even though India kept saying it's the voice of the global South, we did not raise any issues about the Palestinian issue. What about these people who have been occupied for more than 50, 60, 70, more than 50 years? What's going to happen about it? No, nothing was raised. I mean, it was as if this issue doesn't exist. But I bet you in the next international forum, wherever it is, whether it's in the Middle East or not, you will see that this issue is going to come up because the war is going to polarize the people, and there's going to be lots of anger in many countries who will demand that this issue be addressed. So on that somber note, I'm sorry that this is happening. Wars are horrible. People suffer. Children lose their parents. Poor people lose their assets. Hatreds are fond. There is more hatred, and that triggers more violence. So we live in horrible times, and I don't often agree with Prime Minister Modi on some issues, but on this issue, that this is not an era of war, I agree with him. This is not an era of war. Thank you for watching. Please stay in touch. I'm still traveling. I'll be traveling for 7-8 more days, but I'll try my best to provide my views and commentary on this issue as it develops. And also, I think there is going to be, I don't know whether the meeting will go on, the 2x2 meeting between the United States and India. And if it does, I will comment on that too. My next commentary on the Palestinian-Israeli issue will be in Hindi. So please stay tuned. And until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Please, if you have not subscribed to Khanversations, do subscribe to Khanversation, ring the bell icon, like the video, and share it with your friends and family. And if you care about Khanversations, do consider to join it. Thank you very much.